What's a movie or series that is way ahead of its time? 500 Days of Summer. In a world where the guy always gets the girl, this movie was refreshing. I actually showed it to my friend last week, who's never seen it, and she was shocked when I told her it came out in 2009. The main guy is pretty average, but the movie does a good job of showing you how delusional he can be. Zooey Deschanel isn't the manic pixie dream girl. She actually vocalizes her feelings and has a ton of agency. I would argue this movie changed the rom-com genre into something a lot more introspective and honest, as opposed to all the cliches that came before it. Man Seeking Woman FX show on Hulu. Basically, it sounds like your typical How I Met Your Mother copy, but it's a lot more insightful. Yeah, the main guy is lonely depressed, but they do show at times how relationship won't automatically fix his life. The women in the show tend to have a lot of agency, and the characters are actually self-aware of how perhaps they should be better people. It actually makes the few instances of romance in the show feel genuinely earned as opposed to a cop-out. Such an underrated gem. As silly as this may sound, Predator, it holds up even today. I showed it to my daughter last year when she was 12 and she said it could be released today and feel modern. Diverse cast of characters that had their own unique personalities. Female character who isn't made to be a love interest, put on display as a sex object or damsel in distress. Great visual effects action sequences that hold up well. Oh, you gotta check out Blade Runner from the 80s. It's this wild sci-fi flick that feels like it was made yesterday. The way it dives into AI and ethics, it's like it knew what was coming. Plus, the visuals are stunning, even by today's standards. It's one of those movies that just sticks with you, you know? If you're into futuristic stuff and deep themes, it's a must-watch for me. Social-wise, the immaturely the movie made during when coming out as LGBT was a bit more acceptable and was becoming more inclusive and not as some weird disease. Shows the wrongful stereotypes, the dangers and horror of conversion therapy, and that it can be fixed. Girl love that isn't purely fucking or made for the perverted gaze. Awesome movie. To the most CGI of today, and the latter still not looking too bad, as well as making dinosaurs seem like fast animals as well as being more intelligent than the slow, lumbering beasts from before. Forbidden's Planet 1956 was a landmark SF film. It was the first movie to use an electronic music score in the days before commercial synthesizers were a thing, and its special effects were way ahead of anything that had been done before. It also influenced a lot of later SF, including Star Trek. So, you have a show made in 1977 where Billy Crystal plays a gay man in a relationship, and he gets sex change surgery, and people didn't lose their minds about it. Also, the comedy, so freaking good. I love the bits at the end that are supposed to tease what happens next week. The Outer Limits, basically Black Mirror when I was still a teenager. The episode with the anti-cancer vaccine gave me the worst nightmare of my life. I was sweating in bed and shivering thinking I was in a hospital bed waiting for someone to come and inject me that vaccine XD. I didn't see Alien until I was an adult. And holy shit was that movie ahead of its time. It came out only 2 years after the first Star Wars movie, and it looks much better. That movie is a masterpiece. I don't love the sequels quite as much, but the original is amazing. The show Black Mirror because it truly showcases the impact of social media, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and surveillance on us humans. It was ahead of its time back then when it came out, in my opinion, and we are now living in that world. You guys all have pretty terrible takes. Most of these are either A movies that aged incredibly poorly, or B shows movies that basically stole premises from other media that did it better, especially anything related to predicting the future. Star Trek, in the future, ranging from the mid-22nd century Star Trek Enterprise to the late 24th century Star Trek Picard, with the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery jumping forward to the 32nd century. I rewatched Mystery Men recently, and it was definitely before its time in terms of deconstructing the superhero genre that we see today with more serious films and series. It's also pretty funny and features Eddie Izzard as Disco Gangster. Panned by critics when it came out, now a cult classic, was the first film roles for Amy Poehler and Bradley Cooper. Star-studded cast, absolutely hilarious and weird. 2001 world couldn't handle it. Demolition correctness to the point of insanity. The desperate poor being on the brink of revolution. Big business running everything with faceless corporations. Fined for not using the correct language. The Matrix is a movie that was way ahead of its time. Released in 1999, it explored complex themes like simulated reality and the nature of existence long before these topics became mainstream in popular culture. Serial Experiments Lane. A very 90s cyberpunk about humanity's relationship with technology and blurring the line between the real world and cyberspace. This came out before the explosion of social media. A movie that I feel never seems to get much attention in this regard is Minority Report. I think a lot of the technology represented in that movie will definitely be a part of our near future. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. There were very few shows with season-long narrative arcs at the time. TV was all episodic. TS9 practically invented the way we watch television today. The Addams Family, depicting a loving marriage with parents who are involved in their kids' lives, was not common back then. It's a big part of why they're considered weird. Mission Hill late 90s Adult Swim show. I remember it talked about gentrification and also just how nihilistic adulthood actually is. Great show, wish it ran for longer. It's not old anything, but the Invincible Amazon series is miles better than most superhero movies or even most series now. With rare exceptions like Spider-Verse. Definitely Watchmen. A commentary on the superhero genre. Even Chris Nolan said it was too early. Great comic film, even more relevant after the success of the MCU. GCB and Panem. Both had powerful female characters during a time when these roles were not appreciated. If they aired now, they would have quickly become popular. For me, it's probably Dexter or House, both amazingly interesting, with great themes and hilarious jokes. They also have plots that are way ahead of their time. Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino, inspired by a true story about a man who robs a bank and takes it hostage to fund his gay lover's sex change operation. Interstellar, no pun intended. There's gonna be a time in the future we're gonna be like, how is this so accurate if humanity didn't know back then? Alien. For me, this movie is the core of claustrophobia sci-fi horror genre. It's been the inspiration for countless video games and movies. Space Ghost Coast to Coast. The style was not super appreciated at the time, but you can pull up episodes today, and it's absolutely hilarious. Technically a play turned Prussia, but Cats the musical was written in a time before furries getting high and banging was a whole huge thing. I'd say The Wire was way ahead of its time when it aired for a myriad of reasons, though the times have definitely caught up to it. The Twilight Zone, a show about climate change, self-driving cars, and the dystopian future, humans were obsolete. Alien. For me, this movie is the core of claustrophobia sci-fi horror genre. What guides so many video games of this genre today? Alien. For me, this movie is the core of claustrophobia sci-fi horror genre. What guides so many video games of this genre today? Black Mirror. It's like a crystal ball into the future of tech and society, often leaving us questioning where we're headed. Megamind. It predicted the whole concept of incel culture for its villain Titan before the term incel was even a thing. One Piece. It is a queer character that was designed in 2002, and this particular character is a super beloved character. Star Trek. 1. It has a naturally diverse cast too. They touch many controversial topics: gender equality, identity, civics. The Mummy 1999 basically used CGI for the entire second half of the movie, and looks great especially for 90s standards. Starship Troopers. I think I read somewhere that people didn't understand it was satire at the time it was released. Miami Vice, the TV series. It has quality that today's cop shows don't have. CSI and NCIS suck. They suck hard. The Movie Network. Can't believe that in 1976 they predicted so much about what bullshit the media would be doing. Parks and Recreation is actually way funnier now with what has happened in American politics over the last 7 years. Man, I just watched Baby Reindeer and I don't think people would fully understand how much emotion is in that shit. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Nothing that came after that trilogy has surpassed that feeling and craftsmanship. Sense8. The sexual freedom and openness portrayed is majestic and inspiring. There's nothing else quite like it. Revolution, a show about losing power. It would have done big numbers now. But in 2014 nobody could imagine it. The Wicker Man. Folk horror is becoming all the rage now. And it is still one of, if not the best of the genre. Series Space Above and Beyond formed the late 90s. Movie possibly controversial because fandom Star Wars. Definitely Back to the Future, I mean. Who else predicted we'd have flying cars and hoverboards by 2015? Demolition Man. They predicted today's woke situation. I can see how it can lead to the movie's situation. 2001: A Space Odyssey. Honestly, in retrospect, a lot of Kubrick's work seemed ahead of their time to me. The Matrix still blows minds with its deep philosophical undertones and revolutionary visual effects. The 1946 movie The Razor's Edge. The story is about a man who is seeking enlightenment and finds it.